In this video, we'll uncover 5 more stories of 5 American tourists who went missing in Mexico. Each case is full of mystery and unanswered questions. From a peaceful vacation turned nightmare to a trip that ended in silence, these disappearances leave families and friends desperate for answers. Stay tuned as we explore the details and look for clues that might explain what happened to these individuals. On March 11, 1989, at around 2:30 a.m., Mark James Kilroy, a senior at the University of Texas at Austin, was enjoying spring break with his high school friends Bill Huddleston and Bradley Moore from Texas A&M, and Brent Martin from Alvin Community College. They decided to spend their break at South Padre Island, a popular spot for college students. Traveling in Martin's car, they looked forward to a week of fun. The next day, they visited Matamoros, Mexico, a town known for its nightlife and cheap drinks. They spent the night bar-hopping along Calle Alvaro Obregón, mingling with other students and partying into the early morning. The following day, they returned to Matamoros, leaving their car on the American side and walking into town. That evening, Kilroy separated from the group to talk to a woman he knew. Later, when it was time to return, Kilroy rejoined his friends, and they began their walk back to the car. On the way, the group stopped for a restroom break. Huddleston noticed a Hispanic man with a scar signaling to Kilroy and heard Kilroy say something like, "Didn't I just see you somewhere?" Huddleston thought Kilroy knew the man. When Huddleston rejoined Martin and Moore, Kilroy was missing. They assumed he had caught a ride back to the hotel. The next morning, Kilroy had not returned. Worried, his friends contacted the police and reported him missing. Initially, the police thought Kilroy was just another student who got drunk and lost. As time passed and Kilroy didn't turn up in hospitals or jails, they suspected foul play. Mark's parents, James and Helen Kilroy, flew to Brownsville to search for their son. They distributed over 20,000 leaflets and offered a $15,000 reward for information and met with Texas officials. On March 26th, America's Most Wanted featured the case, generating many tips but no solid leads. The Kilroys returned home without answers. Soon after, the U.S. and Mexico launched a large anti-drug operation along the border, involving 1,200 agents, helicopters, and planes. In early April, Elio Hernandez Rivera, a 22-year-old Matamoros resident, was arrested at a police roadblock for possessing marijuana. During questioning, Rivera identified several drug dealers and mentioned his family's ranch, Santa Elena, about 20 miles from Matamoros. The police decided to investigate. On April 11th, Comandante Juan Benitez Ayala of the Mexican Federal Police led a group to the Santa Elena ranch. They found 75 pounds of marijuana. When shown a photo of Kilroy, the ranch caretaker recognized him and pointed to a nearby shack. The officers approached the shack and were overwhelmed by the smell of rotting flesh. Inside, they found 12 shallow graves with dismembered bodies, including Mark Kilroy. The bodies were mutilated in various ways, some slashed, others shot, burned, or hanged. 3 more bodies were found later, totaling 15. Inside the shack, police discovered a gruesome scene. Blood covered the floors, and there was an iron kettle filled with spikes, a charred human brain, and a roasted turtle. Urns contained solidified blood, human hair, and animal parts. A large oil drum seemed to have been used to boil the victims, described as a human slaughterhouse. Rivera confessed that the victims were sacrificed in rituals. The cult believed human sacrifice made them invincible and protected their drug operations from the police. Rivera and the other suspects showed no remorse. They said Kilroy was chosen because cult leader Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo ordered the sacrifice of an Anglo student. Kilroy nearly escaped but was recaptured and taken to the ranch, where he was bound, gagged, and imprisoned in the shack. The suspects claimed they fed him and told him he wouldn't be harmed. 12 hours later, Constanzo executed Kilroy by chopping him in the neck with a machete. His body was later found with legs severed at the knees, and his brain and spine removed. The discovery of Kilroy's body and the mass grave caused a media frenzy and highlighted concerns already discussed in the Texas legislature. On May 3, 1989, the Houston Chronicle warned of rising ritualistic crimes in Texas. This led to Senate Bill 30, introduced by Senator Judith Zaffirini, which increased penalties for crimes involving rituals. The bill passed on August 14, 1989, but was repealed 4 years later due to a lack of prosecutions under it. The search for Constanzo and his accomplice, Sara Aldrete, intensified. 2 weeks after finding the mass grave, Mexican police burned the shack and placed a cross over the area. 2 weeks later, they found Constanzo in an apartment. As the police closed in, Constanzo threw money out a window and fired his gun. He then ordered his partner, Alvaro de Leon Valdez, to shoot him and his companion, Martin Quintana Rodriguez. When police stormed the apartment, they found black candles, 2 swords, a wax skull, and a blindfolded doll. Constanzo and Quintana were found dead, having been shot by Valdez. De Leon Valdez, Aldrete, and 3 other cult members were charged with homicide and other crimes. After this horrific case, James and Helen Kilroy established a non-profit anti-drug foundation in Mark's name, focusing on scholarships, youth interventions, and summer programs. "We put our energy into the fight against drugs," James Kilroy said. "We try to look forward, not back." In late April 2024, brothers Jake Robinson, 30, and Callum Robinson, 33, along with their friend Jack Carter Road, 30, went on a surfing trip to Baja California, Mexico. They were excited about this trip, but it turned tragic. Jake and Callum, originally from Australia, had different paths. Callum lived in San Diego, pursuing a professional lacrosse career and working in the tech industry, while Jake, a doctor, was about to start a new job back in Australia. Their friend Jack, an American, lived in San Diego and was engaged to Natalie Wirtz, with their wedding planned for August 17th in Columbus, Ohio. The 3 were last seen on April 27th, surfing and camping near Ensenada. They had planned to stay in Rosarito but never arrived. Concern grew when Deborah Robinson, Jake and Callum's mother, posted on Facebook about not hearing from them since April 27th. On May 3rd, their bodies were found at the bottom of a 50-foot well in Santo Tomas, Baja California, all with gunshot wounds. The discovery was a shock to their families and friends who had been hoping for their safe return. Authorities believe the men were killed in a robbery gone wrong. Baja California's chief state prosecutor, Maria Elena Andrade Ramirez, said the robbers likely wanted the tires from their truck. When the trio resisted, they were killed. A burned-out white pickup truck, identified as Callum's from an Instagram post, was found at a ranch in Santo Tomas, 40 miles from where the bodies were discovered. 3 Mexican citizens were arrested for kidnapping in connection with the case. One suspect, Jesus Gerardo El Quecas, had a criminal history, including drug dealing, domestic violence, and vehicle theft. The suspects are thought to have seen the surfers' tents and truck, decided to steal the tires, and killed the men when they resisted. They then moved the bodies about 4 miles to the well, covered it with boards, and tried to burn the campsite. Jake, Callum, and Jack had promising futures. Jack was preparing for his wedding, Jake was about to start a new job, and Callum was focusing on his future beyond sports. Their deaths left a deep impact on their families, friends, and communities. Following the murders, a GoFundMe page was created by Aubrey Byers, a close friend of Jack and Natalie, to support Natalie and honor Jack by raising money for scholarships and donations. It quickly raised over $50,000. The surfing community in Ensenada and beyond was also affected. About 500 people marched for justice and better security, demanding safer beaches for surfing and camping. A paddle-out ceremony was held in their honor, with surfers forming a circle on their boards and throwing flowers into the sea. This tragic event highlights the violence in Baja California, a region troubled by drug cartels and crime, though such violence rarely affects tourists. The Baja California Attorney General's office has promised to continue the investigation until those responsible are fully prosecuted. Despite the arrests, many questions remain. The former director of the Ensenada Police Department, Jesus Luna Lezama, suggested the crime had the hallmarks of organized crime rather than a random robbery, noting that such violent crimes are uncommon among thieves who usually avoid drawing attention. It was March 15, 2018, when Kevin Sharp, his wife Amy, and their children Sterling and Adriana arrived in Cancun, Mexico. The Sharps, from Creston, Iowa, were excited for their trip to Tulum, a popular tourist spot on the Yucatan Peninsula. Kevin, 41, was known as the Sharpshooter for his expertise as a stock car racer at Adams County Speedway. He was a local champion, respected both on and off the track. Amy, 38, was known for her kindness and dedication to her family. Their children, Sterling, 12, and Adriana, 7, were bright and well-loved. The family started their trip on March 13th, driving to St. Louis, Missouri, where they stayed overnight. The next day, they flew to Cancun. From there, they rented a car and drove to Tulum, where they had rented a condo. Amy texted her mother at 7 p.m. on March 14th, confirming their safe arrival with, "We made it to our condo." Their vacation was meant to be a break from routine, filled with fun and family time. They planned to meet friends, explore local attractions, and visit a water park. But things took a dark turn when they suddenly stopped communicating. The last message from the Sharps was a text Kevin sent to his friend Travis Anderson around 5 p.m. on March 15th. Travis replied at 11:30 p.m. but received no response. This silence was unusual, as the Sharps typically shared daily updates and photos during their trips. Concern grew among their friends and family in Iowa. By March 21st, the Sharps were supposed to return to the U.S., flying back to St. Louis and then heading to Danville, Illinois for a college basketball game. When they didn't arrive as planned, alarm bells rang. Their family in Iowa, sensing something was terribly wrong, reported them missing just after midnight on March 22nd. The situation escalated quickly. Friends and relatives took to social media to seek help and spread awareness. Ashley Peterson, a relative, posted on Facebook, urging anyone with information to come forward. The family's phones were pinged, showing they were still in Mexico, but with no movement. Mexican authorities and the U.S. State Department were contacted, launching an investigation. The State Department's advisory for travelers to Mexico highlighted an increase in violent crime, adding to the anxiety surrounding the Sharps' disappearance. Late on March 22nd, employees at the condo complex in Tulum noticed a strange odor coming from the Sharps unit. Concerned, they entered the condo and made a horrifying discovery. Kevin, Amy, Sterling, and Adriana were all found dead inside. There were no signs of foul play, leading to speculation about the cause of their deaths. The Creston Police Department and the U.S. State Department confirmed the tragic news. Autopsies in Mexico suggested gas asphyxiation from a faulty water heater as the cause of death. Such accidents, while rare, can happen with poorly maintained equipment. The small town of Creston was in shock. Kevin was remembered for his racing skills and community contributions. Amy's kindness and the children's vibrant personalities left a lasting impact on everyone who knew them. The Sharps case also raised questions about tourist safety in Mexico. The U.S. State Department's advisory for Quintana Roo, where Tulum is located, mentioned increased caution due to crime and a rise in homicide rates. While the Sharps' deaths were not linked to violence, the context added to the overall concern for American travelers. As news of their deaths spread, people from all over expressed condolences and support for the grieving family. The community came together to honor the memory of Kevin, Amy, Sterling, and Adriana, sharing stories of their kindness, achievements, and the joy they brought to those around them. On August 28, 2020, at around 10 a.m., 78-year-old Ian Hirschson and 73-year-old Kathy Harvey were last heard from while staying at Ian's vacation home near El Socorrito, Baja California, Mexico. The couple, who had met through online dating a few years earlier, had been enjoying their retirement. Ian, a retired aerospace engineer from South Africa, had owned the vacation home for 35 years. Kathy, a retired physical therapist, was thrilled to be traveling and spending time with Ian. That morning, Kathy texted her son, Robert Harvey, to say they planned to explore a gold mine or visit a beach. They were supposed to return to San Diego on August 31st, but when they didn't, their families reported them missing on September 2nd to the Baja California State Prosecutor's Office. Ian and Kathy were active in the expat community in Baja California. Ian, well known for his personality, frequently windsurfed around the bay south of San Quintin. Kathy loved walking and traveling, with many destinations still on her bucket list. Mexican authorities launched a search around El Socorrito and Ensenada. On September 5th, they found the couple's dark blue Toyota Land Cruiser abandoned in a remote area of Ensenada, about 3 hours north of El Socorrito. Nearby, they discovered a well containing human remains. The remains were identified as Ian Hirschson and Kathy Harvey. Authorities concluded they had been murdered. Baja California's head prosecutor, Hiram Sanchez, revealed they were killed during a robbery. The suspect, Emmanuel Aguilar, was the son of the landowners of the ranch where Ian had rented his home. Emmanuel, who had a history of drug use, allegedly stabbed Ian and Kathy while they were asleep, then placed their bodies in the Toyota Land Cruiser and drove 4 miles to the well where he disposed of them. Emmanuel Aguilar's arrest brought some relief to the victims' families. Ian's daughter, Ava Setzer, and Kathy's son, Robert Harvey, had been searching for them, sharing information and appealing for help on social media. Ava posted a message on Facebook asking anyone who had seen the couple to contact her. The discovery of the bodies and Emmanuel's arrest provided some closure, but the families remained devastated. Ian Hirschson had a distinguished career and many interests. Born in South Africa, he earned a mechanical engineering degree from the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg in 1963, then moved to the U.S. where he earned 2 master's degrees from Purdue University and Princeton University. He was pursuing a PhD at University of California, San Diego, before founding several successful companies. Ian was also a pilot and enjoyed safaris in South Africa and windsurfing in Baja California. Kathy Harvey, originally from New York, had lived in Tierra Santa, San Diego, for over 30 years before retiring in 2014. She worked as a physical therapist at Sharp Chula Vista Medical Center. In retirement, Kathy enjoyed traveling and walking and had many places she still wanted to visit. She was very happy with Ian. The deaths of Ian and Kathy deeply affected their families and friends. Jim Dietz, Ian's neighbor in Solana Beach, described Ian as a gentleman who never spoke unkindly about anyone. He expressed sympathy for Ian's children, who had already lost their mother a few years earlier. The families appreciated the efforts of the Mexican authorities, particularly the Ensenada Homicide Division, in solving the case. On March 3, 2023, Latavia Tay McGee and her 3 friends, all from South Carolina, crossed the Brownsville and Matamoros Express International Bridge. McGee, a 33-year-old mother of 6, was traveling to Matamoros for an abdominoplasty, a tummy tuck procedure. Accompanying her were close friends Eric James Williams, Shaid Woodard, and Zindel Brown. They had rented a white minivan for the trip. As they navigated the streets of Matamoros, they couldn't foresee the terror ahead. Around 11:45 a.m., their trip took a horrific turn. A car honked at their minivan, and Brown warned everyone not to stop, having seen a gun. Suddenly, gunmen opened fire on their vehicle. Williams later recounted the ordeal, describing how the gunman shot Brown and Woodard as they tried to flee. McGee was approached by a gunman with a small gun. In a desperate move, Williams exited the minivan but was shot in both legs. The attackers, believed to be part of the Gulf drug cartel, forced the 4 friends into a truck. A bystander captured footage of the violent abduction, which quickly went viral. During the ride, Woodard told his friends, "I love y'all, I'm gone." McGee, holding back tears, apologized to him. At their destination, the friends were forced out of the truck. Williams received inadequate medical treatment for his injuries. McGee was taken to another room with Brown, who, despite his grave condition, reassured her, "It's okay, I'm your brother, I'm supposed to be there for you. I love you." He died about an hour later. McGee saw one of the guards watching footage of their kidnapping. She asked to see it, and the guard showed her the video. McGee broke down, feeling hopeless and fearing that their families might never know what had happened to them. The captors moved McGee and Williams to another location, where they were held with other kidnapped individuals. A man claiming to be an American told them their kidnapping was a mistake. This man, who turned from captor to savior, fought with his boss to secure their release. He warned McGee and Williams that once he freed them, he would have to flee as well. He blindfolded them and loaded them into a vehicle, hiding Williams under the bodies of Brown and Woodard to evade detection. They drove for hours, switching vehicles to avoid authorities and the cartel. Finally, around 3 a.m., they stopped at a shack. It was here that Mexican authorities, acting on a tip, found McGee and Williams, along with the bodies of Brown and Woodard. The discovery of the 2 surviving Americans prompted a swift response from both Mexican and U.S. authorities. Days later, Mexican police found 5 men tied up in a truck near the intersection where the Americans had been taken. A note with the men indicated that the Scorpions faction of the Gulf Cartel wanted to hand over those responsible for the kidnapping. This move was likely an attempt to avoid further scrutiny from law enforcement. The group of friends from South Carolina had set out for a medical procedure, but found themselves in a deadly case of mistaken identity. Authorities believe the cartel mistook them for Haitian smugglers, a tragic error that cost 2 lives. Shaid Woodard and Zindel Brown, lifelong friends of McGee and Williams, died in the ordeal. Their families were devastated. Woodard would have celebrated his 34th birthday just a week later. His father, James Woodard, expressed the pain of losing his son in such a brutal manner. McGee and Williams, the two survivors, are still healing from their physical and emotional wounds. The traumatic event left deep scars, but they are grateful to be alive. The kidnapping of the four Americans drew international attention to the violence and lawlessness that plague many parts of Mexico. Matamoros, in particular, is a city where cartels have significant control, leading to frequent violence, kidnappings, and extortion. The U.S. State Department had issued a Level 4 Do Not Travel advisory for the state of Tamaulipas, where Matamoros is located, citing these dangers. Despite the advisory, many Americans still travel to Mexico for affordable medical procedures. McGee herself had undergone surgery in Mexico 2 or 3 years prior without incident. This time, however, their trip ended in tragedy. The aftermath saw a rapid response from both Mexican and U.S. authorities. The FBI launched an investigation and offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to the safe return of the Americans and the arrest of those responsible. The White House and State Department condemned the abduction and killings, and some U.S. lawmakers even called for military action against the cartels. In Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's Hugs Not Bullets policy, focusing on social programs rather than direct confrontation with criminal gangs, faced criticism. The swift response to the kidnapping of American citizens contrasted sharply with the often slow response to the thousands of Mexican nationals who go missing each year. The bodies of Shaeed Woodard and Zindell Brown were eventually returned to their families in the United States. McGee and Williams, after receiving medical treatment, were also brought back home. The friends and families of the victims are left to cope with the aftermath of this senseless violence, hoping for justice and some measure of peace.